Hi, Eric.
Hello, Reverend Mark. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Just wanted to know you were in the right place, which you are.
Yes, thank you. I've just been sort of talking to a couple of people
Oh, thanks.
and sending the links on to them. So, yeah, I'm talking to you on my phone, and I'll just pick up people as they come in on the computer.
Thank you. You're great.
No worries. We'll sort it out. Okay,
We've got
cool.
a bunch of people waiting here as well, so I'm going to start letting them in if that's all right with you.
No, go for it. Go for it. Yeah,
Okay.
all good.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Welcome to Edgware and Hendon Reformed Synagogue, and we are just about to begin our business ethics study session, and I'm just going to let people in. So here comes everybody. Hello. Hello, everybody. We're all getting together, and we're going to be joined by our friends from South Africa pretty soon as well. We're recording, and we're also putting it through on the Synagogue live stream as well. So let me just check that everyone can hear me. Give me a wave if you can. Yeah, that's fantastic. So it looks like you can. I managed to make a major timing mistake by managing to schedule this for London time 7 when our South African friends are expecting it to be Cape Town time 7, which is fine. So they're all now coming in, coming back again, but that was entirely my mistake. So hopefully when they come, they will all forgive me. And I can see some of our South African friends are beginning to arrive, which is brilliant. So there we go. Lovely. And of course, some of our South African friends are actually here in London, like Keto, who's next to Nancy, and Nancy's in Cape Town, Keto's in Edgware. So there we are. And Brian as well is, although you'll hear from his accent, he sounds very much like he's Pretoria, but he's not. In fact, he's also in Edgware, but there we are. And great to see you, and various of our friends from South Africa are coming to join us, which is brilliant. We'll wait till we gather everybody together and get ourselves started. Very lovely to see you, Nancy. How are you? And I can see on the other side you have Eric, also from Johannesburg as well, but also from Finchley in this particular case. But there we are. I think there's a few people hoping to hear some voices from that sound like home. I can see several. Is that now? Hello there. Nice to see you. So in a moment, I'm going to ask people to unmute themselves so we can say hello. And we'll just wait another couple of minutes because Eric's had to deal with my big mistake. Oh yes, so yeah, that's very true. Nancy, I'm afraid, is not quite going to sound like Cape Town. That is very true, as you'll see. Hello, Jeremy, nice to see you. Hello, David and Vivian. And Jill.
I will possibly sound more like Cape Town than Pretoria, because that's where I grew up.
Oh, okay. So you may not know, Nancy, is it correct? Yvonne is Greg Flash's aunt, if that's right.
Yeah,
Brian's wife.
Correct.
Yeah. There's all sorts of, and more people are coming in, which is lovely. And then I'm sure I'm going to ask Eric at some point to send me in the chat when he reckons that we are there and it's time to begin, because I know he's been busy helping people to deal with my mistake in having got the time wrong. But we're getting there. I'll just see if there's. That's it. I think we're nearly there. Lovely. We are getting there. Okay. Now, what I do want to just try to do is the text that we're going to use, I'm going to do by sharing my screen so that everyone can see them. And let's just check that that's going to work fine. I just want to do that for a moment. So here we are.
Oh dear.
So can people see that during business ethics in a time of crisis? Great.
Yeah, that looks good.
Very good. So I'll stop share and we'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, Cohen. Don't know which Cohen, but we've got a Cohen. And Greg Flash. Lovely. So Yvonne, here's Greg. The aforementioned aunt. Hello, Greg. Nice to see you.
Hi, Rabbi. Good to see you too.
Nice to see you. And you can see we've managed to collect Brian and Yvonne just above your head.
There are. Let me change my view. You might be able to see this. Tikito.
Yep.
And Brian.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to give it one more minute and then we're going to properly begin.
They're coming back.
So just as we go, perhaps as we're beginning, as people are coming in, what would be fun to do just for a moment is for people here just to introduce themselves for a moment and just tell us, you know, if you're still in business or if you were in business, what do you do at the moment? That would be nice to do. So we'll just go around a little bit. I can see people from the top, and I'm going to start with Robert, Robert Brand. So Robert, would you like to get us started?
That's Robert, it's Janet's husband. No, please, Robert.
So you need to unmute yourself first. I'll mute everybody else. There we go.
Hi, Robert Brand. I'm a solicitor in central London, specialising in property and estate management work.
There we go. We didn't quite hear you, Robert. Can I ask you to read one more time a bit louder, a bit closer?
Solicitor in the West End, London, specialising in property matters and estate management.
Lovely. Fantastic. Thank you. And Daniel Mitchell.
Hi there, Mark. Hi, everybody. I have an IT support and outsourcing business, and at the moment very busy. Some of our clients not so busy, some of our clients particularly busy, but very different working to how we normally do it, which is all face-to-face and on-site with our clients. So a complete change in how we work, but keeping busy, pleased to say.
Lovely. It's also brilliant, by the way. I'm seeing some of the faces that I recognise from South Africa from when I was briefly at the Temple Israel for 3 months or 7 years ago. So nice to see you, Dean. And Robert and Jill.
We're actually both retired, so we're here for out of interest, really. I was in IT at the stock exchange for a long time. Didn't have much to do with the dealing, really, apart from the computing side of it. So, there we are.
Thank you. And Keto.
Hi. I'm at the present moment, I work with my daughter, who's a doctor, but my field used to be in computers. As Mark said, originally I was born in Cape Town, lived there, but spent lots of my time in Johannesburg, and now live in London.
Thank you. And London, by the way, is this place where it's incredibly sunny with blue skies, just in case you were wondering. But it is actually at the moment. It's 29 degrees here. And Nancy.
Nancy is not in business. Nancy is a community organizer, largely in the volunteer realm here in Weinberg. And now that you've heard my voice, you can tell where I'm from. I'm here out of support for Rabbi Mark, actually, because I was instrumental in getting Mark's teaching spread wide in South Africa when he was here, and always really enjoy his lessons. So thank you all.
Thank you. And Eric.
Eric is retired. He used to be in the art business, and he sold his gallery 2 years ago and his picture frame factory, and enjoying life in Finchley, London, sunny Finchley.
Thank you. Lovely. And Brian and Yvonne.
We've been retired for 14 years, but we were I was in the computer industry in computer facilities for the missile company. And I grew up in Cape Town until I left after my engineering degree. Then I came up to the Transvaal.
Thank you.
And I'm a retired physiotherapist. But Eric, you forgot to mention that you ex-South Africa from long, long ago. So, Mark mentioned it, sorry. We're very busy in lockdown. We cook a lot, we walk a lot, we social distance as everybody. And I'm busy running virtual exercise classes for one of the care homes. That's a challenge to do that, but it's quite enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you. And David and Vivian.
Hi, I'm David. I'm an accountant. I do project work these days, mainly involving mergers and acquisitions. So due diligence on acquisitions or supporting businesses that are going through due diligence.
I'm Vivian and I work for a Hungarian foods importer in London. We're very busy at the moment with the deli and wholesale side, but restaurants, unfortunately, not so good. We do supply the pizza chains, but ticking over.
Thank you. Jeremy and Sharon.
Yeah. Okay, I am Jeremy and Sharon. We're not retired, although I'd like to be. We're working very hard. I'm not from South Africa and have never been, although I'd love to go. We are solicitors. We specialise in property and litigation. Sharon, what do you do?
I'm a paralegal working with Jeremy, and I deal with conveyancing and LPAs, wills and probate.
I mean, in our garden, notwithstanding the background, but that represents one of the loves of my life, which is a wee dram now and again.
Yeah, I can see that. Thank you. My background, by the way, is our synagogue in London. I thought it would be nice to show you. Savile, whoever's in Savile's window has disappeared on us, so I'm just going to move along to the Cohens, who I recognise, but please could you say your first names again for me?
Eric and Sandra.
Eric and Sandra.
From Temple Israel.
Temple Israel, Weinberg, Cape Town.
Brilliant. And what are you in business yourselves?
Beg your pardon,
I'm still working. I'm still doing a lot of work for Temple Israel, Weinberg. Yes, and my husband runs a garage in Greenpoint, next to the Greenpoint shore.
Parking garage.
Parking garage.
Yeah.
Fortunately, at the moment, he's in lockdown, so he hasn't been working since March. So,
wow.
Yeah, getting very bored at home.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, I hope we'll have an interesting 3/4 hour with you. So, Greg, how about you? What are you up to at the moment?
In investments, run pretty much mutual funds, unit trusts locally in South Africa, and some global ones. Probably been the busiest 8 weeks I've had in my career. When markets fall, people need to speak to their investor people more than ever. Interesting times working from home. Actually shut our office, gave up our lease because everyone can work in financial services easily from home, which changes things a lot. And as the industry is very, very busy, I think you're seeing more communication than ever, because it's all online and Zoom, and it actually isn't. There's too much information. It's about trying to stop the information. There's too much, so it's a strange time. To use Zoom in the evening is almost against everything I want to do because there's so many meetings.
We'll have to keep you awake. Let's see what we can do. Stephen, how are you today?
All right, thank you. Oh, well, yeah, it's all right. I'm retired. I was in the stock exchange. I was just working for stockbrokers, which I left in 1976. I then was working as an accounts clerk, and I finished up as a civil servant.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve, for sharing that. And Peter, lovely to see you. Oh dear, we can't hear you, Peter. I'll come back to you in a moment because I think we've unmuted you, but there's something in your own microphone that's a problem. We'll come back to you in a minute. So, Dean, lovely to see you. And next to you is
Lisa.
Lisa. Yeah. Okay. I try to use my memory for names. Didn't quite get there then.
So I'm a chartered accountant. I've got my own business, and I help small and medium-sized businesses within the FMCG space, which is your fast-moving consumer goods, mainly the food space, as an outsourced financial director. And I also have a partner that I work with in America, and we import a product into South Africa, and we also export some South African products to America, where we're selling it on Amazon. So we're trying to get something going there, and hopefully, it is food product. It's a Mandela Rooibos tea. So those of you who have been to South Africa and have tasted Rooibos, that's what we export out of South Africa.
Cool. So that's how we get it on our tables here, or at least in America. Brilliant. And what about you, Lisa? What do you get up to?
I'm involved with an organization called EHRS, and we support entrepreneurs in our community through mentorship, networking, and entrepreneurial training, upskilling ourselves with running our businesses.
Cool. Thank you. And Emily, lovely to see you.
Hi, Mark. Lovely to see you too. Yes, well, I'm now the president of Women of Progressive Judaism South Africa, although that doesn't take up too much time, and very involved in sisterhood, etc., and looking after my husband who's on dialysis, so that's not so easy. But anyway, otherwise, I'm very much a domestic animal.
Thanks, Emily. It's very interesting also in our synagogue, what was the Women's Guild is now called the Not the Women's Guild. And that sisterhood sense that was in Temple Israel has kind of not quite there anymore in EHRS. And it's a really interesting thing as to sort of why it's so strong still in the temples in South Africa. Maybe that's a discussion for another day, but thank you for reminding me of that. Thank you. Let's move to Howard. Just need to unmute you, Howard.
Thank
or you
you
need to,
so I had a backpackers in Cape Town. We employed nine staff, 7 of them full time, and our business has been completely decimated. So we actually, under lockdown regulations, we're not allowed to operate at all. So I'm having to convert the business into long-term accommodation because there's no idea when regulations are going to allow us to operate and or when tourists are going to return. So it's really the end of that. And it means, I think ultimately I might be able to save 3 part-time jobs out of 7 full-time and 2. And most of my days at the moment are spent in lots of battles with UIF, trying to get unemployment for staff, battles with insurance companies who are saying, well, it's fine that there was a virus and you're covered for a virus, but actually the government locked you down, so it's not our fault. So those are the kind of challenges that my days are taken up with at the moment.
Our hearts go out to you, Howard, because I mean, as you can imagine, in all of our communities, there are people who it's not been possible to keep the business going. And just I know for so many of us who work so hard to build something, it must be so difficult. And we hope that you get through this okay and with sanity intact at least. Thank you. Peter, can we hear you yet? No, we still can't. Oh, never mind. Chuck it in the chat, maybe. Okay. And who is under Savile Lasinski? Who's that?
It's, you want to say something, Savile?
I'm retired.
Savile Lasinski is retired, actually, and I teach the conversion class in Cape Town.
Gorgeous. Thank you. Thank you for letting us know.
And we met before.
Yeah.
At Weinberg, yeah. Yeah.
No, lovely. May I ask your first name again? My apologies for not remembering.
My name is Rachel.
Rachel, of course. Right. Thank you very much indeed. That's lovely.
Thanks.
Yep. Absolutely. That's also, by the way, for EHRS members, the conversion class at Temple Israel is quite extraordinary. We feel we're very proud when there's 10 people in our conversion class, which there are at the moment. In Temple Israel, there's often up to 30 people. It's really quite extraordinary. And I know that, is that still the case, Rachel?
Yeah.
That it's an
Every
extraordinary...
year we have a group, amazing group, and yeah, it's a pleasure to teach them.
And it's very, very special. Many people searching after spirituality and finding Judaism meeting what they need. Really something. And lastly, but not leastly, Eric, who is hiding at the moment. Are you there? I think he's hiding and sorting things out. So Eric is the Executive Director of Temple Israel and who's helped to sort everything out for us today. Oh, there he is. No, he's come back. Hello, Eric.
Hello, hi, Reverend Mark. I was just sending somebody else through. Yes, hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us and in this. And we always love to have Rabbi Mark teach us. And we were obviously very grateful to have him with us. And it was actually, scarily enough, 8 years ago that he was with us. So, yeah, I look forward to a wonderful shiur. And thank you again for having us.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you for dealing with my complete mistake in getting the timing wrong between the two countries, and then the fact that EHRS sent out one set of Zoom details and Temple Israel had already sent out a set of Zoom details. So Eric's been busy transferring everybody over. So thank you, Eric, because it was all our mistake. Right, time to study. So here we go. Let's say the blessing over study, because otherwise I'm going to get a wagging finger from Brian. So are you ready? It's the same as the blessing over the candles, but la'asok b'divrei Torah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, here we go. Let's share the screen, which will tell you where we're going. Right. So what we're looking at is Jewish business ethics at a time of crisis. And as we just heard, some people are managing to be able to to keep going in this time. For a couple of people, the business that you happen to be in actually works particularly well at this time. But of course, that's not general, and that's not everybody by any means. However, one of the things I wanted to look at today was how have we dealt with this as a Jewish community over the past? Because this is not the first time a Jewish community has had to somehow deal with huge disruption. Think about, for example, the times when people were, when you would have people coming through a town, making all sorts of difficulties, the Cossacks coming through in a pogrom, or the Crusaders, or even a plague. And of course, there were plagues, which would completely disrupt business. How did we deal with it? Also, we'll find in this shiur that we can go back into Torah, really early sources. And that's because the Torah assumes that we are subsistence farmers. And if you are a subsistence farmer, that means you really are in trouble if anything happens, if the weather is wrong, whatever it might be. But it doesn't mean that our societies were entirely equal, where everybody was in the same boat. Just as it is in our society, there were people who did absolutely fine out of shortage. There were people who starved during shortage. Now, the one thing, at least for us, and I hope that's for everybody who's with us tonight, is, thank God, we're not starving during this time. But I suspect that in some parts of South Africa, people must be in enormous trouble with very, very little to fall back on. And of course, that is the case here in Britain, but at least with a stronger social security system. So that shortage is also reflected in these texts about how do you do business during a time of crisis. So what I'm going to start off with is this basic principle to get the whole thing going, which is, are there limits on how you earn your money? You know, can you just earn your money any way you wish to in Judaism? And the answer is definitely no. There are some things which are not okay to make money out of, which is going to have quite a big effect on how we deal with times of crisis. So what I'm going to ask you to do, if at any point you have a point you'd like to make, or if you would like to ask a question, or if you'd like to disagree with me, which is also totally and utterly fine and happens quite often. So I'm very happy with that when that happens. You've got two choices. You could either put your hand up, which is absolutely fine, and give it a big wave like that. and I'll try and see it in the window. Or alternatively, you can use the put hand up gesture. There is a put hand up control, which should be in the bottom, on the bottom right, probably where there were 3 dots, which would enable you to be able to do so. So I'm going to ask Daniel, who's probably a bit of a Zoom whiz, would you just show us how the hand up thing works and just show us what would happen when you do it? If you can do it, if it's working on this call.
I can't actually see it. It normally is, as you say, they're available.
All right.
I've got a reaction, if you can see that. Can you see
that?
that?
Yeah, we are, so you can do that.
So if you click on reactions, and then there's a thumbs up and a clap. So maybe we'll substitute a clap for a hands up or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So whatever you want to do. So there we are. Oh, Diana's just done it. So there we are. For some people, you've got it. Diana, was that because you were raising your hand to say something? In which case, please unmute yourself. Aha. No, Diana, were you just doing that as a gesture to show how to do it? Fine. Thank you very much. And Robert and Jill, was that a genuinely raised hand there?
Mute myself. Yes. If you click on participants at the bottom, and then you've got raised hand and lower hand in the panel that pops up, it kind of disappears when you share a screen, but you can get it back if you want to use a proper raised hand.
There we are. A couple of people having a go there. So where it says participants, you can find it there. And Jeremy and Sharon just had a go. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. Jeremy and Sharon, was that a genuine? No. Right. Fine. Let's keep going. Okay. Good. So can you earn money from absolutely anything? That's the question I want to start with. Deuteronomy chapter 23. And this is the part of Deuteronomy which is about creating a society in Israel for the future, in the promised land, that is livable. And it's interesting how it puts 2 things together that you'd have thought had nothing much to do with each other. So Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 19. And I'm going to ask some people to read, if I may. So I can see David and Vivian there. So could you decide between you who's going to read this one for me? And then I'll explain what it's saying as we go.
You shall not bring the hire of a harlot or the price of a dog into the house of your eternal God for any vow. For these are both abomination to your eternal Lord, God.
So stop there for a moment. What's the problem with bringing the hire of a harlot or the price of a dog, presumably into the house of your eternal God? This is the temple in Jerusalem we're talking about. What is the problem? And what are you trying to pay for, do you think?
Hire of a harlot.
Yeah.
I can understand the hire of a harlot, because that's, but the price of a dog, that bit I don't get.
So so the hire of a harlot, why would you not bring that into the temple? Basically, you're paying off a vow. Now, in some ways, we have that with our synagogues, our shiur subscription. We vow to pay a certain amount to our synagogues to keep them going. And in some ways, it was much the same for the temple. You would pay off a vow in some way in the temple, but you couldn't bring the proceeds from, well, basically, from being a pimp.
Yeah.
That's kind of reasonable, I think, isn't it? I think that's not what to pay your shiur subs out of. Although there's some real issues in response as to what a synagogue is supposed to do if you're a bit concerned what the source of the money of a member actually is. That might create a donation or might create the shiur subs or whatever it might be. And the price of a dog, what do you think that might be? Again, I'll put everybody out of their misery. It's got 2 possible explanations. One of them, it's the proceeds of gambling. So basically, you've been gambling on fighting dogs, and that's what you're bringing in to pay whatever you're going to pay to the temple. Or the other alternative, it might be the proceeds of male prostitution, because harlot is a feminine word, zonah, and it might be that's what they're talking about. But basically, what it's saying is, not all money is good money. Exactly what that means is going to be qualified in a really interesting way in a moment. So could I ask you to continue, please, David or Vivian?
You shall not lend upon interest to your brother, interest of money, interest of foodstuff, interest of anything that is lent upon interest.
Keep it going, please.
Oh, to a stranger you may lend upon interest, but to your brother you shall not lend upon interest, that your eternal God may bless you in all that you set your hand to in the land where you are entering to possess.
What is the problem with interest? I mean, basically it's saying, don't make money from interest. Why do they think it's a problem? There's a few people here who work in the financial sector. And I'm thinking, hang on, is this trying to say there's a problem with what I do for a living? What's going on here? Why not?
It differentiates.
Does it have to do with the way in which whatever is being invested in, the interest is earned?
The way in which the interest is earned. So go on, what would be the problem?
Well, it would be the same problem as I mean, if you owned a gambling place and your investment was that, and your interest is based on that business, that might not be kosher.
Okay, interesting. Thank you, Stephen. What's your idea?
Well, I think it's not about interest. I think it's about your interest to your brother, because I mean, isn't this the reason why in medieval times we Jews lend money to the non-Jews? Is it still that?
That's right. It certainly has a link with that, because as you see here, it seems that to your brother, however that's defined, you don't lend on interest, but anybody else, you could. So I could see another hand up, and that was, where was that? I saw that Jeremy and Sharon, and then Keto. What's the problem with earning money from interest, do you think, in this passage?
Well, I was going to say the same thing I think as Stephen did, that it does differentiate between brother and everybody else, but the difference is brother and stranger. So presumably it doesn't literally mean brother. I don't know how far the definition of that would extend. And it's also interesting that it tells you twice not to lend to your brother.
That's right, it does. It tells you twice. And the word for brother is achicha, which is a general word for anybody who you consider a brotherly relationship with, effectively. Whereas the word for stranger is ger, which normally means somebody who's like a foreigner within your society in some way. So what's going on? Why this differentiation? I'll go to Keto, and then I'll do some explanation.
So am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay. Mine's a question. Is there a difference between interest or devaluation of, or the devaluation of money? I mean, for argument's sake, if you have a certain amount at the beginning of the year, at the end of that year, it's that amount, you can buy less with that money than you could at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Because of devaluation.
Yeah.
So if you lend money to your brother, then effectively you are losing money.
Right. Okay. You are losing money, but what this I think is suggesting. So this is what our rabbis interpret this as. The issue is you've got somebody to whom you have some kind of a relationship. There is a relationship of some sort between you and them. Therefore, if they need you to lend money to them, don't make money from that. But if there's no relationship between you, that's okay. It's not a big deal. Why would somebody want to borrow any money in biblical times, do you think? What would it be for? So are you happy to have a go with that, David and Vivian? Because I can see you have a hand up. I don't know if it was for that, but...
No, it wasn't for that. So I had a lovely little story to tell, which was related to interest of food.
Yeah, go on, go for it.
Okay, so there's a pepperoni factory in Hungary that was set up 150 years ago by a Jewish man. And he started making pepperoni out of beef.
Right.
Unfortunately, the beef did not sell. So somebody said to him, we'll make it out of pork. And he said, I can't. And they said, yes, you can. You're making money. This is what we'll sell. Anyway, made so much money that in the town, that the factory, to this day, he built a synagogue out of the profits. That's my lovely little story about the trade.
So the synagogue built on pork. I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant idea. Well,
actually,
anyway,
can I ask, joking aside, would that fall under this bit of Deuteronomy?
This bit of Deuteronomy gets interpreted pretty narrowly, okay? So I think quite deliberately. It gets interpreted narrowly that this issue of lending interest is specifically about lending on interest to a fellow Jew, and that you don't lend on interest because there is some kind of a relationship somehow, so therefore you shouldn't make money out of that. And because originally, why would you want to borrow money? It's because you're in dreadful trouble. You've got no seeds to plant. You've got no chance of feeding your family for the next year. We shouldn't make money out of that. Now that's turned in, by the way, in Israel nowadays, and also in Haredi societies, people will use what's called a heta iska, like a legal fiction, to say, I'm not charging you interest, I'm entering into partnership with you in whatever enterprise it is, even if that's just buying some food or whatever it might be, and that counts as a partnership, and therefore it's not interest, it's profits that you're sharing with me. So it is a little bit, it's a legal fiction, but that's how they deal with it. Jeremy, yes.
Yes, so I've got two questions. First of all, the issue about the synagogue built from the sale of pork, doesn't that come under 19? So that's my first point. And my second one is just an observation, because I know from the legal work I do or discussing this tonight, it's very similar to Sharia law, where you can't borrow on interest at all. And so they have this fiction where the lender takes a sublease. So like you say, a joint venture type thing. And that's how they get their money back, with interest.
Absolutely. And that's effectively the way that the Jewish heta iska works. The big difference between Sharia compliance and compliance with that in Judaism is a Muslim may not borrow money on interest, but a Jew can. So we used to have free loan societies in a lot of Jewish communities. I bet they have one in Cape Town, in Johannesburg and Uthorn and places like that. And I know they had them in London and Liverpool and Manchester, free loan societies so that Jews could lend to each other. And it was one of the things the community would set up. But also, it's a different thing. And because Jews could lend money to other peoples, as Stephen said earlier, that meant that there was a possibility of Jews lending money as a business. And indeed, it was very important during medieval times that Jews would actually do that. Okay, let's move on a little bit. And I saw Greg had his hand up and then went down again. Were you about to give a response to the Sharia thing, I suspect, from your own experience? Brilliant, thank you. Lovely. So now we know you can't make money from from absolutely anything. So making money from interest that you're charging to the destitute is not considered to be okay. Making money from some things which might be considered to be immoral by some people, also the same issue goes on. I'm going to just admit it's lovely to see Tony Seymour and Roy Silver coming to join us. Thank you. Let's now move on to economics as a whole. From Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, who in his book, The Dignity of Difference, wrote this about the economic system. So I'm going to, we need this in a South African voice. So Dean, would you be happy to read that, please?
Okay. Of the 100 largest economies today, 51 are corporations and only 49 are nation states.
Which remains true to this day, 20 years on, that it's about half and half.
Wow. Okay, shall I carry on?
Yeah.
Of any economic system, we must ask, does it enhance human dignity? Does it create self-respect? Does it encourage creativity? Does it allow everyone to participate in the material blessings of the created world? Does it protect the vulnerable and help those in need to escape the trap of need? Does it ensure that no one lacks the means for a dignified existence? Do those who succeed share their blessings with those who have less? Does the economic system strengthen the bonds of human solidarity? These are the questions we must ask our global capitalism if we are to exercise responsibility.
So Jonathan Sachs, effectively what he's doing is he's taking the whole thing and saying a Jewish economic system must enhance human dignity and allow everyone to participate in one way or another. And that's a basic principle, which I think we find even in our times, these very difficult times. Is the system that we may find ourselves in once we get through this going to still enable people to have dignity and to share material blessings and protect the vulnerable? Let's have a look at a couple of texts about exactly how that might work and where Jonathan Sachs gets this from Talmudic examples. And I'm going to start with people taking advantage of a crisis. Some people say, never waste a good crisis. And of course, there is money to be made in a crisis. Some of us in the businesses that we have, actually, we found that these businesses really help in this particular situation. Those of us whose businesses help people to deal with the IT issues that they've got. Those of us who are importing food at a time when food is very necessary and when it's one of the few things people can actually spend money on. Now, the question here is, what do we do with that price-wise, for example? So this is in Bava Batra, which is in the Babylonian Talmud, the section which is all about dealing with the sale of land and the sale of some goods. So I'm going to ask, who are we going to ask here? Somebody back in London again. Pete, I know Peter's doesn't work, does it? So, Marcia, are you happy to read this for us? Thank you. So I just need to unmute you.
Oh.
So this is number 3.
At number 3, Babylonian Talmud, Bava Batra 90b, taking advantage of shortage. Our rabbis taught concerning those who hoard fruit, lend money or on usury, reduce the measures and raise prices. Scriptures.
Okay, stop for a moment. Let's find out, who are these people? Hoarding fruit. Why would you want to hoard fruit?
If there's a shortage.
Yeah, create a shortage. What's the point of that?
The price will go up.
Exactly. Okay, number 1. Next one, lending money on usury, which basically means getting the best interest rates you can possibly get in a difficult time. Why would you want to do that? Go on, Dean.
To be able to make more money in a time of crisis.
Reducing measures, just cutting the bottle size, cutting what's inside it, same kind of thing.
Yep.
Just raising prices. What does scripture say? And this is from Amos, from the prophet. So Marcia, if you wouldn't mind being Amos for a moment.
Yeah. When will the new moon be gone, that we may sell grain, and the Sabbath, that we may set forth corn, making the ephah small and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances of deceit?
So this is Amos basically talking about all the people who he feels are making the Israelite society go wrong. There must, some times of crisis, this must have been what people did. Basically saying, when the new moon's over, let's get the Jewish holidays out of the way. It's time to make some money. The Sabbath, we want to go and we want to get back into the market, making the ephah small. The ephah was a liquid measure, falsifying measures, etc. And the shekel great, basically, that's kind of making great amounts of inflation so that your stock is worth more. All sorts of things like that. Not nice. And then Amos says, what does God say about this? Thank you, Marcia.
The Eternal has sworn by the pride of Jacob, surely I will never forget any of their works.
So what is Amos threatening here? For people who do use a crisis to make us, to kind of lower prices, lower measures, etc., etc. What's he threatening? Put yourself in the mind of a biblical prophet. Anybody willing to hazard a go?
God will get you in the world to come.
Yeah, that's right. So Brian says God will get you in the world to come. The fact is, you may be doing very well out of this. I think one of the problems that Amos has got is sometimes people who do all of these things, well, they do absolutely fine. And it looks like they got away with it. Jeremy and Sharon, was there anything you were going to add to that? I saw a hand raised.
No, we were going to. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, he'll come and get you in the end.
Yeah, because I think Amos is a bit worried that it doesn't look like they're doing badly. They're often doing quite well out of it. So David and Vivian?
So I just got a comment about the usury thing. So
yes.
In terms of interest, I mean, a principle is that the more risk you take, that the lender takes, the higher the interest is. It's just a price. It's a price for it. So I can see, that charging extortionate rates just because someone is really on their knees is unethical.
Mm-hmm.
But where does one draw the line with it? Is it suggesting that we should just charge next to no interest?
Yeah. So can you see on the top line, here's the word for it, malui, which means lending. And can you see the next word along there is beribit. Now, rabba means great, making something big. So it's big interest rates. This is
right.
This passage doesn't use the word for a small interest rate, which is neshek. It uses the word for big interest rates. So it's kind of saying, people who are clearly using a crisis situation to enrich themselves right now, there's going to be a problem.
Right.
Okay. Now, was there somebody else with a hand up? I think there was, but they've gone down again. That's fine. All right, let's continue. So now let's have Rob speaking. And since we have Marcia, can we have Nancy? Let's stay American for a little while.
Okay.
Rob said, a person may store his own cab of produce. The same has also been taught elsewhere. Fruit.
Okay, let's explain this. Rab is a rabbi in Babylonia for 3rd century. So now we're not talking Israel, we're in Babylonia, we're talking absolutely real life. You can store a cab of produce. The question that they're asking is what? It's what constitutes hoarding. Anybody, so did this happen in Cape Town? Basically, there was a week in March where you couldn't buy toilet roll anywhere. Did it happen to you? Same thing.
Well, they were threatening to do that here, but I think people sort of controlled themselves.
Right,
We ran out of things like flour.
Right, and we still can't get, has anybody been able to get any bread flour in London for the past few weeks? Just impossible. No, you can't get yeast either to make hull.
Yeast, the reason you can't get yeast in South Africa is not for making bread, it's for making beer.
Okay. Maybe you guys know how to live in a different way.
We're not allowed. No, it's not allowed. No alcohol permitted.
My 16 kilo bags from Amazon, and also the kosher shops have got flour discovered.
Very useful. Well, people keep passing those hints on to each other as to how you're going to deal with the shortages. Anyway, what Rab says is it is actually okay to store something, but he stores his own cab of produce. Then he carries on, the same as being taught. This is elsewhere in the Talmud. Please continue, Nancy.
Okay, fruit and things which are life's necessities, as, for instance, wines, oils, and the various kinds of flour, must not be hoarded, but spices, cumin, and pepper may.
Why? Wait a minute. The necessities can't be hoarded, but the luxuries can. What's going on here?
They're not used as much, are they?
No, they're not used as much. Why would Rab, a great scholar, head of the Academy of Pumbedita, he's part of the first generation of teachers in Babylonia. He's a powerful teacher. Why would you say this is okay?
I totally agree with him about one thing, which is that wine is a necessity.
Fine.
Because there has to be enough for everybody.
Yeah, there has to be enough for everybody. But cumin and peppers and things like that, Okay, make your money off that. So I think that works quite nicely for Vivian, doesn't it? Importing Hungarian luxury foods.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's no shortage of bringing things over from Hungary, which is quite amazing.
Right. Okay. Now then, let's carry on with the prohibitions. So one of the things we're seeing is a really practical work for that. Nancy, would you carry on, please? The prohibitions mentioned.
The prohibitions mentioned apply only to one buying from the market, but in the case of him who brings in for storage of his own, this is permitted.
Okay, so basically buying from the market, think about Tevye, you take your horse, you take your wagon, you fill it up, you put it in your barn. No, there you're trying to corner the market in something. If you're just buying for yourself, don't worry about it. And I think there was a bit of an issue for a lot of people who were a bit kind of felt guilty about buying a little bit of what you knew you were going to need, and you knew you were going to have a lot of trouble going back out again. And you know what's okay and what isn't. What do you think it's asking you to do morally here? Just where we're up to so far. How is it asking you to behave in a crisis? Because who knows what the crisis is? It could have been loads of failed harvests. It could have been invasion, whatever. What's it asking you to do in a crisis? Let's just put the general moral thing behind this. What anybody like to suggest?
Create a shortage.
Yeah, so from Brian and Yvonne, don't create a shortage of things because it's just not the right thing to do. And of course, the last words here really answer the question. Nancy, one more sentence, please.
In years of famine, one must not hoard even a cob of carobs, because thereby one brings a curse on the market price.
So what's that saying? In a famine time. So Sharon and Jeremy.
Price will go up.
Yeah, I also first of all I just wondered what a cab was. How much is that?
A cab is basically a basketful.
Okay, so it's saying in a famine, you've literally got to take just what you need for the moment,
yeah,
and nothing more than that.
Absolutely. And carobs, of course, are a long life thing, you know, so it'd be sensible to store it. But it's basically saying, don't you do that and make the prices really bad for everybody else. That's a tough thing to ask, as in the worse it gets, the more you're supposed to think of other people. And that's when it gets more difficult, actually, goes the other way. Let's carry on a little bit about also what to do in business in general. Any other comments about this taking advantage of shortage? I'm going to go to Stephen, who has raised his hand. Stephen, yeah. I need to unmute you. Stephen, you're still muted. No, you're still muted. There we go. Off,
I was just thinking about Joseph in the Torah.
Oh yes.
I mean, the price doesn't come into it. I mean, we know that he hoarded for use of the produce during the famine, but we're not told anything about money. What he charged. I mean, if he charged a normal price, that would be all right. But if he priced an inflated price, I suppose that wouldn't have been all right.
Well, interesting. I mean, the Joseph story is an interesting one because actually what happens in the Joseph story, he ends up with all the Egyptian farmers selling their land to him because they're in such desperate trouble. And really does take advantage of it. And it's one of those wonderful things about the book of Genesis. You cannot look at the book of Genesis and look for great behavior. It doesn't work for so many of the characters there. And what Joseph does definitely buys advantage for the Israelites to be able to eventually come down into Egypt during the time of famine, but it doesn't feel that it has anything in any link to this, which is probably why Amos is quoted. It's Amos who's being quoted, a prophet, not the Torah, because they couldn't quote the Torah on this because you'd have to quote Moses, you'd have to quote Joseph, which seems to go against it. So be aware, our rabbis do make some choices here. Now then, I'm going to move on to something here. I want to move on. We're getting towards the end of what we can do today. I'm going to go on to an issue about competing people out of business and what you have to do when the people from the next town come into your town to set up because things have been in big, big trouble when in their town. I'll whiz us through it. A man may not open a shop next to another man's shop or a bath next to another man's bathhouse, and the latter cannot object, okay, you have to deal with competition. It will happen, because he can say to him, I do what I like in my property, you do what you like in yours. Right. So it seems that competing with people is fine. You can't say to people, even at a time of crisis, as a fellow Jew or as a fellow member of this town or whatever, you can't open up near to me. That's just not the right thing to do. And we studied a bit of this in our business ethics group before, but this is another text which takes a different angle on the whole thing. On this point, there's a difference of opinion among Tanaim. That's the rabbis from the time of the Talmud. The residents of an alley can prevent one another from bringing a tailor or a tanner or a teacher or any other craftsman, but you can't prevent another from setting up in opposition. As in, what that means is you can't stop somebody from competing, but you can zone an alley and say, we're not having any tanners there, we're not having any craftsmen there, we've got enough here. But people can set up in opposition. But Rabban Simlian ben Gamliel said you can prevent each other. There's a lot of argument. Now we go to Rabbi Huna. All of these rabbis are from the 4th century in Babylonia. This is real business law we're looking at. How do you deal with different people trying to come in and set up in competition, probably in response to crises in their town? So Rabbi Huna, the son of Rabbi Joshua, said, it's quite clear to me that the resident of one town can prevent the resident of another town from setting up in opposition in his town, okay? So the next town's had a crisis, a big problem, a flood, whatever. You can say to the people who are trying to come in, no, you can't set up. But not if he pays taxes to that town. So the principle is always, if there's a level playing field, you can't prevent other people. Anyway, the resident of an alley can't prevent the resident of the same alley from setting up in opposition in his alley. You can't stop people. But Rabbi Huna, the son of Rabbi Joshua, so this is just again telling you this is 4th century, raised a question. Can the resident of one alley, so one street, prevent the resident of another from competing with him? You know, is it about you've got to let people in from the other towns as long as they pay the taxes, but within the town you can say, you can't set up a business next to mine and compete me out of business. And the word which it uses is very rare in the Talmud. It's this one. Can you see it in bold? It says teku. And teku, that word, which is 5 lines up from the bottom in bold, basically means we've never resolved this one. So you can't prevent people coming in from another town because they may be responding to a flood or a fire or whatever, or an attack. Within a town, you can prevent other people from competing with you. What do you think? In this crisis which you're all dealing with, do you think it should be that people should just not make trouble for other people in business at this point? You should make it easier for other people. What do you feel? Do the normal rules of business apply at this time? So any opinions?
I think it depends on scale. So, if, big corporations putting out small business people out of business so they lose their livelihood, I think is wrong. On the other hand, if you've got a small person trying to make ends meet, maybe they're in one sector and they've got to do something else to make ends meet, then I'm less troubled by that.
So the right Jewish thing is just let other people be, let them do it, even if they also set up as a consultant in a similar area because now they're no longer working for the big company because of what's happened. I wonder. Okay, anybody else? Sharon, I think I saw Jeremy.
Yeah, Sharon had to go to another, she's got another shul meeting, but I'm still here. Yeah, I think it depends on the sort of motivation. I think if someone is setting up next to you, as it were, because there's nowhere else they can do it and they need to try and get a bit of business, that's okay. But if they're setting up next to you when they could easily have gone somewhere else just because, I don't know, maybe they want to screw you or maybe, then I don't think then that's not okay. That's,
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to have to stop, unfortunately, because we've reached the end of end of today. What I was going to do, I was going to go on to helping each other in tough times and the same case of a 1st century credit crunch, but that'll have to wait for another time. I'm going to stop share for a moment so that we can say goodbye to each other. Always happens in Jewish study. You never quite get everywhere you want to go because that's okay. We've got the rest of our lives to study. So I just want to say to everybody, really wishing you well in Cape Town. It's lovely that you come to join us, and everybody in London. And Eric, thank you for suggesting this and getting it going. It's really brilliant of you, and I wish you so well in Temple Israel, thinking of you all and hoping that the community has a wonderful continuation of life and that things get okay, and that for Howard that all comes right in the end. I really do. It sounds like it's a big struggle. I know it is for some people here. So let's unmute ourselves and say a goodbye to each other.
Mark, can you send everybody the text?
Bye. Thank you. Goodbye.
Mark.
Thank you.
Good night.
Mark, can you send everybody the text?
Yes, I will. I'll send
Thank
the
you.
text to Eric, and I'll send them to everybody I've seen tonight.
And thank you for organising this. It's been very good.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks. Bye,
Good
everybody.
night. Night all.
Cheers, everybody. Erev Tov.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, Eric. Thank you for dealing with all the complications, as you always do.
No worries. Take care, Mark.
Good night. Good night, Johnny. Hey, nice to see you. How are you?
Hi. Hi, I've kept myself unmuted and no video, but it's fantastic listening to you, Rabbi.
Hey,
And
it's great to see
fantastic
you
to
again.
see you again.
Lovely to see you.
Goodbye.
One day
Cheers,
we'll
bye.
travel, but we can always do this. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.